years ago, I used to work out at Planet Fitness. And one of the things that I liked about Planet Fitness is that their slogan was that this is a judgment-free zone. And it was plastered all over their walls. They even had this thing called the lunk alarm. And the lunks are those guys who like go into the gym and they're just like heaving and hoeing and just grunting and yelling every time that they like do a rep or whatever. And they would literally like sound this lunk alarm that would like, this light would flash and it would blare out and all this kind of stuff, because they were trying to create an environment where other people who maybe weren't as strong or as fit didn't feel like they were being judged for being there. In our culture, judgment goes on all of the time. We're constantly judging ourselves, we're judging others, we're trying to make sure that we make ourselves as presentable as possible, especially like on social media and stuff, to say like, hey, look at me, look at this great life that I'm living. And then we find ourselves wondering all the time about how other people are judging us, and then in turn, we end up judging other people. Especially right now in the climate that we're in the world that we're in, there's so much judgment that has been going on either side of the spectrum, where we judge people who maybe don't understand fully what's going on, and we're like, how are you not awake to this? Or on the other side of it, in the other extreme, there are people who are harshly judging against other people groups and things like that. And obviously, one of the things that is talked about a lot in scripture is not judging other people. In fact, there's this story in John chapter 8 where Jesus is sitting down and teaching a crowd of people in someone's home. In the middle of his teaching, all of a sudden, the door busts wide open and in walks this group of Pharisees, and they are dragging this woman with them. And they say, Jesus, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Okay, now I'm not trying to get too graphic or anything like that, but if she was caught in the act of adultery, it says that like she was in it, in the middle of it. So she comes drugged through the streets by this group of Pharisees, just in all of her shame and everything, just right there, thrown in front of Jesus in the middle of this room. Couldn't imagine being her. We have felt like that sometimes though, where we feel like when we fail and we mess up, or we just, maybe some of our insecurities or whatever, we feel like we get drugged into the middle of the room and that there's this whole group of people just staring at us. And these Pharisees, they go on and they say, the law says that you should stone such a woman who has been caught in the act of adultery. And the one thing that I find really interesting in here, and this kind of goes to show the culture of that time, is that they only brought the woman. The actual Old Testament law says that both should be stoned. Okay? So where was the man in this situation? Why didn't the man get drugged into the situation like the woman had been drugged into the situation? I always find that very perplexing. They do this whole big thing, and they're trying to get Jesus to like mess something up. The Pharisees were always trying to trip up Jesus, and so they're like, hey, the law says this, so shouldn't we be stoning her? And Jesus very simply looks at this woman, looks at the crowd around him, and he says, let he without sin cast the first stone. And then what Jesus does next, I think, is like one of the funniest things in the Bible. He literally looks down and he just starts drawing in the sand. Like, to me, if I'm one of those Pharisees, like that's such a slap in the face. Like he was just like, you know what? Any of you who haven't ever done anything wrong in life, go ahead, you throw the first stone. I'm just gonna chill right here and I'm gonna draw me some pictures. You gotta think this is Jesus. He's part of the creator of the universe. Like he's probably a pretty good artist. Like he's probably doing some detailed dirt drawings of like a beautiful like dog with a whole like mountain scene in the back, like all this kind of stuff. Just sitting here drawing. And slowly, one by one, starting with the oldest to the youngest, people start to get up and leave. Even those same Pharisees who drugged that woman into that room right before Jesus, they left. And Jesus looks around and says, where are your accusers? Where are those who are accusing you? And she said, no one accuses me. And then he tells her to go and sin no more, basically saying, leave that lifestyle of adultery that you were caught in. You are free, go on. I don't judge you either. And the craziest thing about this passage to me is that Jesus had every right in that situation to be the one to cast the first stone. Remember, he said that he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Jesus could have picked that stone up, thrown it at her, and then everybody else could have joined right in. But what did Jesus do? He sat there and he began drawing a picture. Because what he was worried more about than anything else, other than the legalities of everything else that was going on, he was worried about that woman and having a relationship with her and showing everybody else that they have issues too. So for us, when we're looking at other people, or we even look at ourselves and the judgment that we put on ourselves, or the judgment that we put towards others, or the judgment that we feel towards others, we can rest in the comfort in knowing that Jesus does not judge us, that he loves us for who we are, where we are, and he forgives us. And even though he could throw that stone, he doesn't.